What if the love you lost centuries ago was never truly gone? What if, across lifetimes and forgotten memories, your soul found its way back to hers? This is not just a story of reincarnation. It is a story of a promise and a love too powerful to die. Some encounters are accidents, some are fate, and some are the echoes of a promise made long before our memories began. Jonathan Reed was not a man who believed in destiny. At 36, he had built his life on logic, on structure, on the certainty that the world moved by rules he could understand. Until the night he saw her, standing at the edge of a crumbling fountain in a forgotten square of Florence, her dark hair illuminated by the moonlight, her eyes locked onto his as if she had been waiting 300 years just to find him again. And when she whispered his name, not Jonathan, but another name, older, heavier, soaked in memory, he knew. Everything he thought he knew about reality shattered. Because somehow, impossibly, he remembered her too. It had started days earlier, when Jonathan had arrived in Italy on a forced vacation. His friends had insisted he needed a break from his obsessive work routine. What they did not realize was that Jonathan had been feeling something strange for months, a tugging sensation in his chest, a whisper at the edge of hearing, as if something or someone was calling him. Florence was beautiful but disorienting. Winding alleys, echoes of forgotten centuries, and a sense, growing stronger each day, that he was not merely visiting. He was returning. The first real crack in his skepticism appeared at the San Lorenzo Library. Jonathan had always loved old libraries, but this one felt different as he wandered the vast halls. His footsteps slowed before an ancient manuscript sealed behind glass. Without understanding why, he found himself murmuring words in a language he had never studied. Latin, but older somehow. His heart raced. He could see flashes of images, a hand reaching for a promise sworn beneath a blood-red moon, a voice, laughing and then crying, calling him by a name he could not yet remember. Thomas Leclerc, a nobleman, a traitor, a lover, and her name was Elisabetta, the woman whose face he had not yet seen, but whose presence was woven into the very fabric of his being. That night, he dreamed. In the dream, he stood on a balcony overlooking Florence. The city was different, smaller, rougher, but it was the same sky, the same hills in the distance, and she was there, Elisabetta. Her face blurred by tears and time. She pressed something into his hands, a ring, wrought of silver and iron, and whispered, "Find me. Even death cannot break what we swore." He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and he knew he would find her, or she would find him. The days blurred after that. Jonathan wandered the city in a daze, driven by instincts he did not understand, until that night at the fountain, where the past caught up to him at last. She was standing there, waiting, alive, real, breathing. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a jacket, but her eyes held centuries. When she spoke, her voice trembled. "Thomas, you found me." They sat for hours, talking, piecing together the impossible truth. Her name now was Isabella Conti. She was 29. She had been having dreams too, visions of a man whose face she could never see, but whose voice she would know in any life. Visions of betrayal, of love cut short by violence, of a ring lost to the tides of history. She lifted a chain from her neck, and there it was. The same ring from his dream, the ring she had given him 300 years ago. Jonathan felt the ground shift beneath him, reality bending around a truth too large to deny. They were them, reborn, returned, given another chance. But why? As they dug into the past together, a darker truth emerged. Thomas and Elisabetta's love had not merely been tragic, it had been catastrophic. Thomas had been framed for treason against the Medici family. Elisabetta had tried to save him. Instead, she had condemned them both. He had died in prison. She had disappeared into legend, a ghost whispered about in the alleys of Florence. But the betrayal had never been fully uncovered. The real traitor had escaped justice, and the promise Elisabetta had made to find him, to finish what they had started, had anchored their souls to the world. I did, bound together by love and by vengeance. The visions grew stronger, more violent. They saw glimpses of the traitor, a man with cold eyes and a serpent's ring, and they realized with a growing horror that he too had been reborn. Somewhere in Florence, somewhere close, watching them, waiting, the race began. They followed fragmented clues hidden in the oldest parts of the city, cryptic inscriptions, hidden passageways, paintings whose eyes seemed to follow them, all leading to one terrible truth. The descendant of the original traitor was alive, a powerful man, a politician with deep roots in Florence, and he knew who they were. He had always known. He had spent his life ensuring that the truth of what had happened 300 years ago would stay buried, even if it meant burying them again. The confrontation came at the ruins of an abandoned villa outside the city, the air thick with storm clouds, the earth trembling as if the past itself was rising to witness what was about to unfold. Jonathan and Isabella faced him together. This time, they would not run. This time, they would not die alone. Secrets spilled into the storm, accusations shouted into the wind. And then, in a flash of violence, it was over, and the cycle broken, the debt paid, the promise fulfilled. In the aftermath, Jonathan and Isabella stood beneath the battered sky, holding each other as the first rays of dawn broke over Florence. They were free, no longer tethered by unfinished vows, no longer haunted by betrayal. They could choose their future, not bound by fate, but blessed by it, together in this life, at last, and somewhere in the quiet spaces between worlds. Two young lovers from centuries past smiled. Their story, once torn apart by treachery and time, had found its ending and its beginning. All over again, the days after the confrontation at the villa were anything but peaceful. Though they had defeated the man who had carried the blood of betrayal, Jonathan and Isabella knew their battle was not truly over. Something lingered, a presence neither of them could explain. It haunted their dreams, a whisper at the edge of hearing, a name neither could fully remember, but both felt like a blade pressed against the soul. Not all debts have been paid. They turned to old records, desperate to understand, hidden deep in the Medici archives. Beneath the dust of centuries, they found a letter, a confession written by a monk who had witnessed the events 300 years ago. The betrayal had not been the act of one man. It had been orchestrated by a brotherhood, a secret order known only by a symbol, an Ouroboros swallowing its own tail, the Circle of Ash, dedicated to preserving power by any means necessary. They had not only condemned Thomas and Elisabetta, they had bound their souls to endless cycles of grief and unfinished love. Unless the circle was broken completely, the cycle would continue. In every life, in every death, the realization hit Jonathan and Isabella with crushing force. Their love had been cursed, not by fate, but by design. If they did nothing, even if they stayed together now, they would be torn apart again in another life, and the circle would endure. They had to finish it. Once and for all, the clues pointed them toward a forgotten crypt beneath the city, hidden under the ancient Basilica di San Miniato al Monte, where only shadows dared to linger. The crypt was sealed with symbols older than the church itself. It took days of decoding ancient texts, hours spent in crumbling libraries by candlelight. But at last, they found the key. A phrase carved into the wall behind a centuries-old painting. Only those who walk with memory shall pass, armed with nothing but a flashlight, a map sketched from crumbling parchment, and each other. They descended into the darkness. The air grew colder with every step. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. As they reached the final threshold, They saw it, a door of black stone, covered in carvings so old they predated written history. In the center, a single indentation. The size and shape of the ring Elisabetta had given Thomas 3 centuries ago. The same ring Isabella now wore around her neck. Jonathan reached out, heart hammering. As he pressed the ring into the stone, the door groaned and slid open. And beyond it, a chamber bathed in an eerie blue light. And standing in the center, a figure, cloaked in shadow, waiting. It was not the descendant of their betrayer. It was something older, a guardian, a soul bound to the circle itself. He had no name, no face, only a voice, deep and hollow. You should not have come. Jonathan stepped forward. If defiant, we have carried this burden long enough. The guardian tilted his head. You think breaking the circle will free you? It will only free others to suffer. Without the circle, chaos will consume the souls of the world. Jonathan hesitated, doubt creeping in, but Isabella took his hand. Her voice steady. It is not chaos we fear. It is forgetting. Forgetting who we are. Forgetting what we swore to each other. We choose freedom. We choose love. The guardian laughed, a sound like bones breaking. Then you must fight for it. The room trembled. Visions assaulted their minds. Thousands of lives, thousands of deaths, lovers torn apart. Families broken, heroes betrayed. All the work of the circle, all the lies spun across history. The weight of sorrow almost crushed them. But Jonathan and Isabella held on to each other, anchored by a love that had defied time itself. Step by step, they crossed the chamber. The guardian tried to stop them. Illusions, nightmares, whispers of despair. But they kept walking until they reached the altar at the center. Upon it lay a blade, simple, unadorned, forged not of metal, but of memory itself, the only weapon that could sever the bonds the circle had created. Jonathan looked into Isabella's eyes, no words needed. Together, they lifted the blade and brought it down, splitting the altar, splitting the past, splitting the curse. The guardian screamed. The chamber exploded in light, and then silence. Perfect. Total. Liberate. And again, and again.